Hi everybody! In today's video, we're going to be going over a quick start guide for the Bambu A1 Mini 3D printer. This guide is intended to get you started from scratch with the Bambu A1 Mini to make your first print. We'll be going over parts of the printer, how it works, how to set up your printer for printing, how to load your model into the software, adjust the parameters, and finally, how to get that print started. Let's start with a quick overview of the parts. First, we have our LCD touchscreen, followed by our tool head module and our hot end. And then here we have the PTFE tube. And then over on the side, we have our filament spool that is going to contain all the filament. And lastly, we have the hotbed and the removable build plate. Next, we'll quickly go over how this 3D printer works, turning filament into a finished 3D print. Printers like the A1 Mini work by forcing plastic filament through a heated nozzle known as the hot end, which deposits the plastic on a build plate in a precise pattern. Once this first layer is complete, the printer will then print the second layer on top of it, and your final print will be comprised of dozens, if not hundreds, of these thin plastic layers. Next, let's look at how to prepare your A1 Mini for your first print. First, we're going to want to plug in the power cord and turn on the power rocker switch in the back of the printer. Next, we're going to take our filament spool and insert one end of our filament into the PTFE tube. Make sure that when you position your filament spool, filament is coming from the bottom of the spool and not the top, so as to prevent kinks. Feed the filament into the tube, and once you feel resistance, you'll know that you've reached the tool head. Next, we're going to come around to our LCD touchscreen menu where there are several options: print files, filament, control, setting, and assistant. We only need the filament option. Go ahead and select that menu, and then we're going to select load since we're loading in new filament. The nozzle should begin to heat up after this, and you should see a small dribble of molten plastic coming out. Once you see this, go ahead and select filament extruded, continue. The printer will then continue squirting out filament to purge what is left of the old filament in the nozzle, but this is an automatic process. Next, we can update the filament information in the printer by clicking edit and changing the information within. This allows us to have clear communication between the computer and the printer, which just makes your life easier later on. Lastly, we're going to check that the build plate is clean, free of debris, and aligned with the hotbed. One thing to note, oil from your skin can disrupt the print's ability to adhere to the build plate. When in doubt, it's always a good idea to wash the build plate with soap and warm water. On the build plate, you'll see two notches. Slot these in to the matching notches at the back of the hotbed and let go. Ensure the corners are aligned. Next, let's go to the computer and open up Bambu Studio. This is the software that's going to allow our computer to communicate with the printer and adjust the parameters for what we want to print. First, we're going to go to the Prepare tab to see our workspace. Next, we're going to sync info, continue to sync filaments, and hit OK. And of course, make sure that your printer is set to the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. Then we're going to hit our Add button and add in our model. Bambu Studio can take a wide variety of file types, but for beginners, let's stick with STL. Here we have the SSTPZ, and we'll make sure that our model looks the way we want it to and is oriented correctly. Next, we'll select our preset, and we'll just stick with the 20mm standard one here. Then we're going to hit Slice Plate, and the software will go through the work of turning our 3D model into G-code, or instructions for the printer to follow. Once finished, we can go up to Slicing Result, look at line type, and we're looking specifically for bridge and overhang wall. These two color codes are going to show us areas of the print where there is plastic being laid out over thin air. Large areas like these can lead to some pretty nasty print results. So if you notice a large area outlined in these colors, it's a good idea to try enabling supports. Here we're going to select Enable Supports and Support Critical Regions Only. This will allow the software to determine if there are critical regions in need of support. Go ahead and slice plate for a second time, and we'll see here that no supports were generated, meaning the software decided that these areas of overhang were small enough to be printed without supports. The only other parameter worth adjusting for your first print is going to be your sparse infill. A higher sparse infill percentage will make for a heavier, denser, and sturdier print, and vice versa for a lower percentage. Once these parameters are adjusted, go ahead and hit Print Plate, make sure your printer is selected, and make sure your filament settings are accurate. Then hit Send, And once it finishes sending, you'll be taken to the device page where you can keep tabs on the printer's progress. Once the file has been sent, you should see it show up on the LCD for the printer, and the printer will begin its initial calibration. This calibration includes processes such as bed leveling, flow calibration, nozzle cleaning, and vibration dampening, which will make for cleaner and more consistent prints. Once this process has begun, however, your work is done, so just sit back and watch that print come to life. And as you can see, our prints turned out pretty clean. So thanks for sticking to the end, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy printing!